The doors of the Galactic Council Chamber were massive, stretching 50 meters high and carved from a single piece of crystallized starlight. Ambassador Hyan had walked through them 3 times in his career, and each time he carried the hopes of 8 billion humans on his shoulders. Today would be no different, except perhaps in the weight of what he already knew was coming. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien architecture. Floating platforms held representatives from 14 different species, each breathing different atmospheres contained by shimmering force fields. The Corvians sat highest, their feathered crests gleaming with colors that shifted based on their mood. Below them were the insectoid Sulkith, their compound eyes tracking every movement in the room. The Vorian representatives, beings of pure energy contained in crystalline shells, pulsed with soft light near the center. Hyan stood alone on the petitioner's platform. His simple black suit looked plain compared to the elaborate garments and natural displays of the alien representatives, but he wore it with dignity. Behind him, projected on holographic screens, were images of Earth, cities gleaming in the sunlight, children playing in parks, scientists working in laboratories, farmers tending their fields. All of it meant to show that humanity deserved a place among the stars. The council speaker, a Corvian named Velthus, raised one wing arm for silence. The chamber fell quiet immediately. His voice, translated through neural implants into every language present, rang out with authority that came from 3,000 years of unbroken council rule. Ambassador Hyan of Earth, Velthus began, his crest turning a deep purple that Hyan had learned meant disapproval. We have reviewed your petition for council membership. We have studied your species for 50 of your years. We have watched your progress, your conflicts, your growth. The council has reached a decision. Hyan felt his heart beating faster, but kept his face neutral. He had been a diplomat for 20 years. He knew how to hide his emotions, even when facing the moment that would define his species' future. The vote was unanimous. Velthus continued, and Hyan's stomach dropped. Unanimous votes were never good news. Earth's petition for council membership is denied. The words echoed in the vast chamber. Hyan had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a physical blow. This was the 3rd rejection. Each one had come with reasons, with promises that humanity just needed more time to prove themselves worthy. But something in Velthus' tone suggested this time was different. Furthermore, the speaker continued, and now his crest shifted to orange, a color Hyan didn't recognize. The Council has determined that humanity poses a significant risk to galactic stability. Your species' history of violence, your inability to unite under a single government, your reckless expansion into space without proper guidance. All of these factors have led us to a necessary conclusion. Hyan felt cold dread spreading through his chest. This was more than rejection. This was something worse. Effective immediately, Earth and all human colonies are placed under full quarantine. No council species may trade with humanity. No technology transfers will be permitted. No human vessels may travel beyond the Sol system and its immediate neighboring systems. Automated defense platforms will be established to enforce this decree. This quarantine will remain in place indefinitely, until such time as humanity demonstrates they are ready to join civilized space. The chamber erupted in various forms of alien communication. Some species flashed lights, others released scent markers, still others made sounds beyond human hearing. But the message was clear. The galaxy had voted, and Earth was alone. Hyan found his voice, though it came out rougher than he intended. How are we supposed to prove ourselves worthy if you cut us off from the very civilization you want us to join? You're condemning us to stagnation. Velthus' S-crest shifted to cold blue. That is not our concern. If humanity is truly ready for the stars, you will find your own way forward. If you are not, then the quarantine protects the galaxy from your destructive tendencies. The decision is final. You are dismissed. The platform beneath Hyan's feet began to move, carrying him toward the exit, whether he wanted to go or not. He looked back at the assembled council members. Some wouldn't meet his eyes. Others stared at him with what might have been pity or contempt. He couldn't tell. The Corvians looked satisfied. Their crests now a calm green dot. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks through the Council's portal network, which humans were allowed to use one final time. Hyan spent most of it in his quarters, preparing his report, trying to find the right words to tell his people that the galaxy had abandoned them. When his ship finally entered Earth's orbit, he looked down at the blue and green world that was humanity's cradle. From space, it looked so peaceful. You couldn't see the arguments happening in the United Nations. You couldn't hear the debates about what to do next. You couldn't feel the anger and fear that would soon spread across every continent. The landing in Seoul was quiet. No crowds greeted him. The failure had been broadcast across all channels before his ship even arrived. Hyan walked through the spaceport feeling like he had let down his entire species. General Day was waiting for him at the military transport. The old soldier's face was hard, his eyes cold. "They really did it," he said simply. "Yes," Hyan replied. "We're on our own now." "Good," Day said, and there was something in his voice that made Hyan look at him sharply. "Maybe that's what we needed. Maybe it's time we stopped asking for permission." They drove through Seoul in silence. The city was tense. People gathered in the streets, watching news broadcasts on public screens. Some were angry, shouting about alien arrogance. Others looked scared, worried about what isolation would mean for Earth's future. But Hyan noticed something else, too. In some faces, he saw determination. In some eyes, he saw fire. That night, Hyan met with the Emergency Council in a secure bunker beneath the city. Leaders from every nation were present, their faces appearing on screens around the circular table. Dr. Nari was there too, representing the scientific community. She looked tired but alert, her fingers already dancing across a tablet as she took notes. General Day stood and addressed the room. "The Galactic Council has made their position clear. They see us as a threat, as children who need to be locked away for the galaxy's safety. They've given us 2 choices. Accept our cage or prove them right by beating against the bars until we destroy ourselves." He paused, his eyes moving across every face in the room. "I propose a third option. We prove them wrong, not by pleading for their approval, but by becoming something they never expected, something they can't ignore, something they'll wish they had embraced when they had the chance." Dr. Nari looked up from her tablet. "You're talking about preparing for war." "I'm talking about preparing for everything," Day replied. "War, peace, survival, prosperity. Whatever comes. But we do it on our terms, in our way, without waiting for permission from species that think we're too dangerous to sit at their table." The vote that followed was also unanimous. But unlike the Council's vote, this one was born from hope rather than fear, from determination rather than judgment. Earth would not accept the cage. Earth would not beg for scraps from the Council's table. Earth would build its own table. And when they were done, the galaxy would see what humanity was truly capable of. 20 years had passed since the quarantine began, and to anyone watching from the outside, Earth had accepted its fate. The automated defense platforms the Council installed at the edge of human space detected no attempts to break through. Human radio signals grew quieter. The few Council observation posts that monitored Earth reported a species turning inward, focusing on their own world, seemingly content with their isolation. The Galactic Council congratulated themselves. The human problem had been solved without bloodshed. Every few years, they reviewed Earth's status, and every time the report was the same: quiet, contained, no longer a threat. Velthas himself had said during the last review that perhaps in another century or two, they might reconsider humanity's application, if they showed sufficient progress. What the Council didn't know was that silence and surrender are very different things. Captain June stood on the bridge of the Nightfall, a ship that officially didn't exist. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency, monitoring systems that the Council's best scientists would have said were impossible. The ship itself was a masterpiece of human engineering, built in secret shipyards on the dark side of Earth's moon and in hollowed-out asteroids throughout the Sol system. "Status report," June said quietly. His voice never rose above conversational level, but everyone on the bridge heard him clearly through their neural implants. "All systems green." "Captain," replied Lieutenant Mignot from the navigation station. "Quantum drive is stable. Stealth field is holding at maximum efficiency. We're completely invisible to Council sensors." June allowed himself a small smile. The quantum drive was Engineer Hanna's breakthrough, developed after 15 years of research that built on principles the Council said were theoretically impossible. Instead of using the Council's portal network, human ships could now create their own temporary passages through space. It was slower than the portals, but it was independent. Humanity no longer needed permission to travel the stars. "Begin the jump sequence," June ordered. "Let's see if our friend's coordinates are accurate." The Nightfall shuddered slightly as reality bent around it. Space twisted, colors that had no names bleeding across the view screen for a moment before everything snapped back to normal. But they were no longer in the Sol system. The jump had taken them 60 light years in a matter of minutes. "Jump successful," Mignot reported. "We're in the Kepler 442 system, exactly where Commander Tay said we'd be." "Good," June said. "Now let's find his ship and get him home. He's been out here long enough." Commander Tay had been beyond the quarantine for 3 years. He was one of 30 intelligence officers who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human history, infiltrating Council space. Using fake identities, illegal gene modifications to pass as other species, and a network of informants built painstakingly over years. These officers gathered the information Earth desperately needed. They learned about Council military capabilities, their ship designs, their tactics. They mapped trade routes and identified which species were unhappy with Council rule. They discovered political tensions, old grudges, territorial disputes that the Council's peaceful facade hid. Every piece of intelligence was transmitted back to Earth using quantum-encrypted channels that the Council couldn't detect or decode. Tay's small ship appeared on the Nightfall sensors, right where he said it would be. It was a piece of junk by human standards, barely spaceworthy, but it had served its purpose. Within an hour, Tay was aboard the Nightfall, looking tired but satisfied. "Welcome back, Commander," June said, clasping the other man's hand. "Did you get what we needed?" Tay nodded. "Everything and more. The Council's unity is a performance. Behind closed doors, they're barely holding together. The younger races are tired of being treated like children by the elder species. The frontier worlds feel abandoned. And most importantly, their military hasn't fought a real war in over 1,000 years. They've forgotten how, and we haven't," June said quietly. "No," Tay agreed. "We definitely haven't." Back on Earth, in a laboratory deep beneath the Gobi Desert, Dr. Nari was making history. She stood before a holographic display showing a double helix of DNA, but it wasn't quite human. Sections glowed with colors indicating genetic modifications that would have seemed like science fiction just 20 years ago. "The latest batch is ready for testing," said her assistant, Dr. Bora, reviewing data on her own screen. "Subjects show increased resistance to radiation, enhanced bone density for high-gravity environments, and improved oxygen efficiency for low-atmosphere worlds. What about the neural enhancements? Nari asked. Processing speed is up 40%. Reaction time is nearly double baseline human. And the distributed command protocol is functioning perfectly. Even if you remove the commanding officer, the unit continues to function with barely any degradation in effectiveness. Nari nodded slowly. She sometimes felt uncomfortable with the work they were doing, playing with the very code that made humans human. But then she remembered the Council's verdict, remembered Veltha's cold dismissal, and her resolve hardened. The Council had judged humanity based on what they were. These modifications would help ensure humanity survived, to show them what they could become. Begin the next phase, she said. We need to be ready. Above the Earth, in orbital stations that gleamed in the sunlight, other preparations were underway. General Day walked through the training deck of Station Unity, watching young soldiers practice combat maneuvers in zero gravity. These weren't the soldiers of old Earth militaries. They were the unified defense force, men and women from every nation who had volunteered to protect humanity's future. Admiral Yuna wants to see you. General, his aide said, approaching with a tablet. Day nodded and made his way to the command center. Admiral Yuna was younger than him, barely 40, but she had proven herself brilliant in every simulation they had run. She would command Earth's fleet when the time came. The 4th Fleet is complete, Yuna reported as Day entered. That gives us 400 ships total. The Nightfall returned from its mission successfully. Commander Tay's intelligence confirms everything we suspected about Council military capabilities. 400 ships, Day said thoughtfully. The Council has tens of thousands. The Council has tens of thousands of ships that haven't seen real combat in centuries, Yuna corrected. We have 400 ships crewed by people who know exactly what they're fighting for. Quality matters more than quantity. Let's hope you're right, Day said. Because we're running out of time. The Council's latest observation report shows they're starting to get suspicious about our radio silence. They might send an investigation team. Then maybe it's time we stopped hiding, Yuna said. We've been preparing for 20 years. Our ships are ready. Our people are ready. And according to Tay's intelligence, the frontier worlds are desperate for someone to stand up to the Council. Day looked out at the Earth below. From this height, you could see the lights of cities glowing in the darkness, could see the thin blue line of atmosphere that protected the only home humanity had ever known. They had come so far in just 20 years. From a species rejected and isolated to one that could reach across the stars on their own terms. Contact Captain June, Day said finally. Tell him to proceed with Operation First Contact. It's time the galaxy learned we haven't been sitting quietly in our cage. In a small apartment in Seoul, former Ambassador Hyan sat at his desk, reviewing a speech he had been writing for months. He was old now, his hair completely gray, his face lined with wrinkles earned from 2 decades of tireless diplomatic work. When the quarantine began, many had expected him to retire, to fade away into obscurity. Instead, he had become one of the architects of Earth's new diplomatic strategy. His terminal chimed with an incoming message. It was from General Day, marked urgent. Hyan opened it and read the single line. It's time. Prepare for departure. Hyan looked at the speech on his screen one more time, then saved it. He would deliver it soon, but not to the Council. Not yet. First, humanity needed to prove they were worthy of being heard. And if the last 20 years had taught him anything, it was that humans were very good at proving people wrong. Outside his window, Seoul bustled with life. People going about their business, unaware that everything was about to change. Some would call what Earth was planning reckless. Others would call it dangerous. The Council would certainly call it a violation of the quarantine, but Hyan would call it something else. Freedom. The mining colony of Talvira had seen better days. Built 30 years ago on the mineral-rich world of Caecilian. It had once been a prosperous outpost supplying rare elements to the Council's industrial worlds. Now, half its habitation domes were empty, the remaining colonists barely scraping by, while pirate raids picked away at their supplies like vultures. Governor Rix, a four-armed vendor who had run the colony for a decade, stood in the control center staring at another report of lost shipments. The Council had promised protection, promised support, promised that frontier worlds like his mattered. But when the pirates came, the Council ships were always somewhere else, dealing with more important matters in the core systems. Governor, his communications officer called out, her voice tense with confusion. You need to see this. Rix moved to her station, his lower arms crossed while his upper arms gestured impatiently. What now? Another pirate signal? No, sir. It's something else. Ships coming out of nowhere. Not from the portal network. They just appeared. Rix looked at the sensor display and felt his blood run cold. 5 ships, designs he didn't recognize, moving with precision that suggested military training. They were broadcasting on standard frequencies. But the language was unfamiliar. Then the translation software kicked in, and Rix heard a voice he never expected to hear in this part of space. A human voice. Mining colony Talvira. This is Captain June of the Earth vessel Nightfall. We received your distress signals regarding pirate activity. We are here to offer assistance. Please respond. Rix stared at the display like it might bite him. Humans. Everyone in the Council knew about Earth, about the quarantine, about how the dangerous species had been locked away for everyone's safety. Yet here they were, impossibly far from their prison, offering help like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sir, should I respond? The communications officer asked. Rix thought about his orders, about Council regulations, about what would happen if word got back that he had cooperated with quarantined humans. Then he thought about the empty domes, the hungry colonists, the next pirate raid that would probably finish off what remained of Talvira. Open a channel, he said. The human captain appeared on screen. He was younger than Rix expected, with a calm face and steady eyes. Behind him, Rix could see a bridge that looked surprisingly advanced for a species that had been cut off from Council technology for 2 decades. Captain June, Rix began carefully. With respect, you are in violation of the quarantine. Your presence here could cause significant problems for both of us. June nodded as if he had expected this. Governor, we understand your concern, but we've been monitoring distress signals from frontier worlds like yours. We know the Council has left you unprotected. We're not here to cause trouble. We're here to help, if you'll let us. And what do you want in return? Rix asked. Nothing in the galaxy was free. Trade, June said simply. Fair trade. The minerals you mine for resources and technology we've developed. No exploitation, no demands. Just 2 civilizations helping each other. Over the next week, Rix watched in amazement as the human ships made good on their promises. When pirates attacked, expecting an easy target, they found themselves facing human weapons that disabled their ships without destroying them. The humans captured the pirates alive and turned them over to colonial authorities. Human engineers came down to the colony and fixed systems that had been breaking down for years. They shared medical supplies that saved lives. They were professional, polite, and most surprisingly, they treated the colonists with respect that Rix hadn't felt from Council officials in years. Diplomat Sora arrived on the 3rd day. She was older than Captain June, with kind eyes and a voice that made you want to trust her. She sat with Rix in his office, drinking the local equivalent of tea, talking about possibilities. The Council abandoned you, Sora said gently. Not intentionally, perhaps, but you're too far from the core systems to matter to them. Humans understand what it's like to be dismissed, to be told you don't matter. We'd like to build something different. The Council will not allow this, Rix warned. When they find out humans are operating in Council space ... Let them find out, Sora said. We're not hiding. We're helping people who need help. If the Council has a problem with that, they can come talk to us. Word spread fast in the frontier. Other colonies heard about what happened at Talvira. More distress signals went out, some real, some just requests for contact. Human ships appeared at world after world, always offering help, never demanding submission. On the agricultural world of Prinvaya, human farming techniques tripled crop yields. On the research station, orbiting the gas giant Helios Prime, human scientists shared discoveries that solved problems the Council had dismissed as unsolvable. On the water world of Aquarius, humans helped establish underwater cities using technology they had developed for Earth's own oceans. The Council noticed. How could they not? Reports flooded in from across the frontier about human activity. Emergency sessions were called. Heated debates raged in the Council chamber. Fleet Commander Ixtar, a veteran Corvian military officer, was assigned to handle the problem. He had fought in the border skirmishes against the Vrex swarm 50 years ago. He knew combat, and he knew that the best way to deal with a violation was to make an example. Take your battle group, Velthas ordered. Find these human ships. Disable them. Capture their crews. Show the frontier worlds what happens when someone violates Council law. Ixtar assembled 20 warships, including his flagship, the Vengeance of Sky. They were Council military vessels, each one a product of thousands of years of technological advancement. Against 5 human ships, it should have been a one-sided fight. They tracked Captain June's fleet to the Cassilian system. Sensors showed the human ships in orbit around Talvira, apparently unaware of the battle group's approach. Ixtar felt confident. The humans would surrender once they saw the overwhelming force against them. Attention, human vessels, Ixtar broadcast. You are in violation of Council quarantine. Power down your ships and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with force. For a long moment, there was no response. Then Captain June's face appeared on the screen, and he was smiling. Fleet Commander Ixtar, June said pleasantly. We've been expecting you. The human ships vanished. One moment they were on sensors, the next they were gone completely. Ixtar's crew scrambled to find them, sensors sweeping space frantically. Behind us! Someone shouted. The human ships had appeared behind the battle group, somehow moving faster than sensors could track. Ixtar barely had time to process this before his tactical officer reported weapons lock. All ships, evasive maneuvers, Ixtar ordered, but the Council ships were designed for intimidation and show of force, not for real combat. They were big, powerful, and slow. The human ships moved like dancers, weaving through space with precision that should have been impossible. The Vengeance of Sky shuddered as something hit the shields. Not a killing blow, but a precise strike that sent cascading failures through the defensive grid. More hits followed, each one targeting specific systems. Weapons offline. Engines disabled. Communications jammed out around him. Ixtar watched as his battle group fell apart. Ship after ship went dark, disabled by weapons that seemed to know exactly where to hit for maximum effect. And through it all, not a single ship was destroyed. The humans were surgical, precise, taking them apart piece by piece without killing anyone. In 15 minutes, it was over. 20 Council warships drifted in space, helpless. And the 5 human ships reformed in a protective pattern around Talvira, unscathed. June's face appeared on the emergency channel. Fleet Commander, your crews are safe. We've disabled your ships, but caused no casualties. You're free to repair and return to Council space. He paused, and his expression hardened. Tell the Council we came in peace. They taught us to prepare for war. Ixtar sat in his command chair, surrounded by darkness and emergency lighting, and felt something he hadn't felt in his long military career: fear. Not fear of defeat, but fear of what it meant. Humans weren't supposed to be this advanced. They weren't supposed to be this capable. The quarantine was supposed to keep them contained, keep them from becoming a threat. But looking at the tactical display, at 20 disabled warships and 5 human vessels still in perfect formation, Ixtar realized a terrible truth. The quarantine hadn't stopped humanity. It had given them 20 years to become something the Council wasn't prepared for, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 3,000-year history. Representatives shouted across the chamber, colors flashing, scents releasing, sounds echoing in ways that the translation system struggled to keep up with. The careful order and dignity the Council prided itself on had shattered like glass. "This is an act of war," Velthas declared, his crest blazing red with fury. "The humans attacked a Council military fleet. They violated the quarantine. They are arming the frontier worlds against us." Emergency Speaker Korval, a Selkith whose compound eyes seemed to look at everyone at once, tried to restore order. "The humans claim they disabled the fleet without casualties. Fleet Commander Ixtar confirms this. No one died. That changes nothing." Velthas snapped. "They humiliated our military. They made us look weak in front of the entire frontier. If we do not respond with overwhelming force, every minor species in the galaxy will think they can challenge the Council." But not everyone agreed. Representative Jax of the Vendor species stood, his forearms spread in a gesture of dissent. "Perhaps we should ask ourselves why the frontier worlds welcomed the humans. Perhaps we should wonder why colonies we are supposed to protect were so quick to accept help from a quarantined species. Are you defending them?" A Vorian representative pulsed, their crystalline form glowing with anger. "I am stating facts," Jax replied calmly. "The frontier has been neglected. We know this. We have known it for decades. But it was easier to ignore their problems than to fix them. The humans simply did what we should have been doing all along." The argument raged for hours. The elder races, the Corvians, Sulkith, and Vorians who had dominated the Council since its founding, demanded military action. But the younger species were not so sure. Some saw opportunity. Some saw justice. And some saw a chance to finally challenge the order that had kept them as second-class members for centuries, while the Council fought with itself. Ambassador Hyan walked through those same massive doors he had entered 20 years ago. But this time, he was not a supplicant. This time, he was not alone. Behind him walked representatives from 40 frontier worlds. Vendor, Kellison, Prithin, Hexer, and dozens of other species that had accepted Earth's help and partnership. They wore simple clothes rather than elaborate garments. They carried no gifts or tribute. They came as equals. The chamber fell silent as they entered. Korval's eyes tracked the unprecedented procession. Never had so many non-council species appeared together. Never had they walked in with such confidence. "Ambassador Hyan," Korval began, clearly struggling with protocol. "You were not summoned. You are here in violation of your quarantine. The quarantine was your decision, not ours," Hyan said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We respected it for 20 years. We stayed in our corner of space. We made no aggressive moves. But when we heard cries for help from worlds you had abandoned, we could not ignore them. You attacked a Council fleet." Velthas interjected. "We defended ourselves against a fleet that came to capture us," Hyan corrected. "Fleet Commander Ixtar can confirm that we disabled his ships without killing anyone. If we wanted war, his crews would be dead. But we do not want war. We want what we have always wanted, to be part of the galactic community. That was denied to you, Corval said. By you, not by them. Hyan gestured to the representatives behind him. These 40 worlds have entered into partnership. Agreements with Earth. Trade agreements, defense agreements, cultural exchanges. They did not ask your permission because, frankly, you stopped caring about their welfare long ago. Representative Jock stood again. Ambassador Hyan speaks truth. My colony world of Vendor Prime has received more support from Earth in 6 months than we received from the Council in 20 years. Human engineers fixed our water purification systems. Human medical teams saved my daughter's life when Council doctors said her condition was untreatable. Why should we not partner with them? More voices joined in. Representatives from Council species, who had been quiet for years, suddenly found their courage. They spoke of neglect, of being treated as resources rather than partners, of decisions made in the core systems that devastated the frontier. General Day watched the proceedings from Earth through quantum-encrypted channels. Beside him, Commander Tay smiled slightly. It's working, Tay said. The Council is fracturing exactly as we predicted. Don't celebrate yet, Tay warned. The elder races won't give up power easily. They'll try to unite the Council through force if they have to. He was right. While the Council chamber descended into chaos, Velphas met secretly with the leaders of the Selkith and Vorians. The 3 elder races had ruled the Council since its founding. They had built the portal network, established the laws, maintained order across thousands of worlds. They would not let humans or frontier rabble tear down what they had created. We mobilize everything, Velphas said. Every ship, every weapon, every resource. We crush Earth and make an example of them. Then we remind the frontier worlds why they need us. But Earth was not idle either. In orbit around dozens of worlds, human crews worked alongside local populations. Not building weapons, but building something more powerful. Infrastructure Dr. Nari stood in a medical facility on Vendor Prime, watching as her team trained local doctors in new surgical techniques. This is what breaks their power, she said to Dr. Bora. Not weapons, knowledge. Once we share what we know, once we give these worlds the tools to stand on their own, the Council can never put that genie back in the bottle. On Pringthee, human agricultural scientists worked in the fields alongside local farmers. On Hexer Station, human teachers gave classes to young aliens who had never imagined leaving their home system. On Aquarius, human and local engineers built cities together, sharing designs and innovations. And in underground data centers scattered across human space, Commander Tay prepared to drop the biggest bomb of all. He had spent 3 years gathering evidence. Financial records showing how the elder races manipulated trade to keep younger species dependent. Communication logs revealing deliberate technological suppression. Military reports documenting how the Council ignored pirate raids on frontier worlds while protecting core systems. Treaties that were worded to sound fair, but actually ensured the elder races maintained their dominance. All of it compiled, verified, and ready to be broadcast across every communication network in the galaxy. Are we sure about this? General Day asked as they prepared for transmission. Once we release this information, there's no going back. The Council will declare total war. They're going to do that anyway, Tay replied. At least this way, the galaxy will know why we're fighting. The data burst went out on every frequency, through every channel, bypassing the Council's communication controls using quantum entanglement techniques that were impossible to jam. Within hours, every inhabited system in the galaxy had access to the truth. The reaction was immediate and explosive. 7 species formally withdrew from the Council, declaring the elder races had violated the principles the Council was founded on. 4 more demanded immediate reform and the resignation of the current leadership. 3 declared themselves neutral, unwilling to support either side. The council shattered. Not completely, but enough. The elder races still had support, still had military might, still had thousands of years of accumulated power. But they no longer had unity. They no longer had the moral authority they had claimed for so long. In the council chamber, now half empty, Vel'Thuz stood before the remaining representatives. His crest was black, a color that appeared only in moments of rage and desperation. "So be it," he said quietly. "If the frontier wants war, if these humans want war, we will give them war. We will mobilize the combined fleets of the elder races. We will show them why our species have ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia. And when it is done, those who stood with Earth will beg for our mercy." 3,000 warships began to gather, the largest military force assembled in modern galactic history, all focused on one target: humanity. Back in Seoul, Ambassador Hyan stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere up there, beyond the atmosphere, the Nightfall and hundreds of other human ships were preparing for battle. His terminal chimed. A message from Admiral Yuna. "Fleet is ready. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Hyan thought about the journey that brought them here. 20 years ago, the Council had voted against Earth, had locked them away, had told them they were too dangerous for civilized space. Now Earth had become exactly what the Council feared. But not because humans were violent or aggressive. Because when you corner someone, when you abandon people who need help, when you use power to suppress rather than uplift, eventually someone will stand up and say enough. That someone just happened to be humanity, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans could do when they stopped asking for permission and started taking responsibility. The combined fleet of the elder races was a sight that should have inspired terror. 3,000 warships spread across space in formation, their weapons powered and ready, their shields shimmering with energy that could level cities. Corvian battlecruisers with their elegant curves and devastating firepower. Selkith dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. Vorian energy ships that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. At the center of this armada, aboard the massive flagship Eternal Glory, Vel'Thuz stood before a holographic display showing the edge of human space. His crest was a determined silver, the color of absolute resolve. Around him, military commanders from all 3 elder races monitored their forces. "This is the largest fleet assembled since the Unification Wars," General Fax of the Selkith said, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "The humans cannot possibly stand against this. They have 400 ships at most." Admiral Kylvan of the Vorians pulsed. "Even with their technological tricks, numbers will overwhelm them." Vel'Thuz nodded slowly. "Send the ultimatum. Give them one chance to surrender." The message went out across all frequencies. "This is the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. Earth and all human vessels will power down immediately and submit to Council authority. You have 1 hour to comply. Failure to surrender will result in the complete destruction of your military capability and the forced occupation of your worlds." In the command center of Station Unity above Earth, Admiral Yuna read the ultimatum without expression. Around her, the command staff waited for her response. They had trained for this moment for 20 years. But knowing a battle is coming and facing 3,000 enemy ships are very different things. "Well," she said finally, "I suppose asking nicely was worth a try." She activated her communication link to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Yuna. The Council fleet has arrived. They've given us an hour to surrender. I say we use that hour to get into position. Execute Battle Plan Prometheus." Across human space, 400 ships moved with precision. But they weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were forming up, creating a defensive line that seemed laughably inadequate against the force arrayed against them. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Yuna's flagship, Captain June checked his tactical display. General Day stood nearby, having come up from Earth to witness the battle that would determine humanity's fate. Commander Tay was at the intelligence station, monitoring Council communications and fleet movements. "They think we're going to fight them head-on," Tay said. "Their formation assumes a traditional battle." "The Council hasn't fought a real war in 1,000 years, June replied. "They've forgotten that wars aren't won by whoever has the most ships. They're won by whoever wants it more." The hour passed. Yuna opened a channel to the Council fleet, her face appearing on Veltha's S-screen. "Fleet Commander Velthas," she said calmly. "You asked for our surrender. I have a response for you." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of 20 years of preparation, of 8 billion humans who had been told they weren't good enough, weren't civilized enough, weren't worthy. "You should have left us alone." The battle began. The Council fleet advanced in textbook formation, confident in their overwhelming numbers. Velthas watched the human ships holding position and allowed himself to believe this would be quick. A demonstration of power, a lesson taught, order restored. And the human ships moved, and everything Velthas thought he knew about space combat became useless. They didn't retreat. They didn't scatter. They accelerated toward the Council fleet at speeds that should have torn them apart, then shifted into patterns that made his tactical officers curse in confusion. Human ships appeared where sensors said they couldn't. TB fired from angles that shouldn't exist, then vanished before the Council vessels could target them properly. "What are they doing?" General Thax demanded as his tactical display dissolved into chaos. "They're using quantum jumps in combat," Tay explained calmly from the Indomitable, though the Council couldn't hear him. "Micro-jumps, too short to go anywhere useful normally, but perfect for combat. We can be here, then there, then somewhere else, faster than their sensors can compensate." The first Council ships went dark as human weapons found their targets. Not destroyed, Yuna had been clear about that, but disabled. Weapons offline, engines dead, shields collapsed. The humans weren't trying to kill, they were trying to win, and there was a difference. But the Council had numbers, and eventually numbers matter. Human ships began taking hits. The Nightfall's shields collapsed under sustained fire. The Aurora lost its main engines. The Defiant's weapon systems overloaded. On the Indomitable's bridge, damage reports came in rapid succession. They were hurting the Council fleet, but they were taking damage too. The numbers game was catching up. "Admiral," Captain June said quietly, "we can't sustain this much longer." Yuna nodded. She had known it would come to this. 400 ships, even with every advantage they had developed, couldn't defeat 3,000 in a straight fight, but who said they had to fight straight? "Dr. Nari," Yuna said into her communication link, "you're up." On Earth, in a facility that looked like a simple research station, Dr. Nari activated the project she had been working on for 15 years. The beacon dot, it was a quantum transmitter unlike anything that had ever been built. Not a weapon, not a shield, but something more dangerous to the Council than any bomb could be. Information. Every scientific discovery humanity had made in 20 years of isolation began broadcasting across the galaxy simultaneously. The quantum drive specifications, the genetic modification techniques, the medical advances, the agricultural innovations, the manufacturing processes, everything that had made humanity's rapid advancement possible, sent to every inhabited system, translated into every language, packaged in formats that any species with basic technology could understand. The artificial scarcity the Council had maintained for millennia ended in an instant. On frontier worlds, scientists and engineers received data that would transform their civilizations. On core worlds, young members of Council species looked at the information and realized how much had been kept from them. The elder race's monopoly on advanced technology, the foundation of their power, cracked like ice in spring. Vel'Thas felt the moment the galaxy shifted. Reports flooded in from across Council space about unauthorized transmissions, about information spreading faster than it could be contained, about younger species suddenly having access to knowledge that was supposed to take centuries to develop. What have they done? He whispered Dot on the Indomitable. Yuna watched as something unexpected happened. Council ships began breaking formation. Not all of them, but enough. Ships crewed by younger species, by those who had been questioning the elder race's authority, began powering down their weapons. "Admiral," Commander Tay reported, "we're receiving communications from Council vessels. Multiple ships are requesting to withdraw from the battle. They're saying they won't fight to preserve a system that was built on suppressing their development." The Council fleet was fracturing, and this time not politically, but right there in the middle of battle. Captains from younger species had seen the beacon's transmission. They had seen proof of what had been kept from them, and they made their choice. Vel'Thas watched his fleet dissolve before his eyes. Ships retreating, ships refusing orders, ships even turning to protect human vessels from their own allies. The elder race's ships fought on, but without unity, without the overwhelming numbers they had counted on. "All ships," Vel'Thas broadcast desperately. "This is treason. This is surrender to chaos. Fight, or the Council will hold you accountable." But his threats rang hollow now. How do you threaten people who just learned they had been deliberately held back? How do you demand loyalty from those who realized it had been built on lies? The battle continued for another 3 hours, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The elder race's ships, powerful as they were, couldn't overcome human tactics and the defection of nearly half the Council fleet. Ship after ship went dark, disabled by precise strikes that neutralized threats without destroying them. Finally, with 2/3 of his fleet dead in space, and the rest either retreating or refusing to fight, Vel'Thas sent the signal he never imagined he would send, a request for terms. Admiral Yuna received the transmission on the Indomitable's bridge. Around her, the command staff was exhausted, several nursing injuries from when the ship had taken hits. But they had won. Against 3,000 ships, humanity had won. "Put him through," Yuna said. Vel'Thas appeared on screen, and he looked old. His crest was gray now, the color of defeat and despair. "What are your terms?" he asked simply. "Those aren't my terms to give," Yuna replied. "Talk to Ambassador Hyan." The negotiations took 3 days. Not in the Council chamber, which stood half empty now, but in a neutral space station, where representatives from dozens of species gathered. The elder races sent their diplomats, but they no longer controlled the conversation. Ambassador Hyan, now nearly 70, but still sharp as ever, stood before the assembly. Not as a supplicant this time, but as the architect of a new order. "The Galactic Council, as it existed, is finished," he said simply. It was built on a foundation of controlled information and enforced hierarchy. That foundation no longer exists. Every species in this galaxy now has access to the knowledge they need to advance on their own terms. Vel'Thas, attending via hologram, spoke bitterly. "You have created chaos. Without order, without guidance, species will war among themselves. The Council kept peace. The Council kept control," Hyan corrected. "Peace and control are not the same thing. Yes, there will be challenges ahead. Yes, some conflicts will arise. But that is the price of freedom. And every species here deserves the chance to make their own mistakes and achieve their own greatness." He pulled up a document on the holographic display. This is a proposal for a new galactic assembly. Equal representation for all species, regardless of age or technological level. Decisions made by consensus, not by the decree of the powerful. Shared knowledge, shared resources, shared responsibility. Representative Jock stood, his forearms spread wide. The vendor worlds support this proposal. Others joined in. Species that had been silent for centuries suddenly had voices. The fracture that began with Earth's defiance had become a complete transformation. The elder races signed the accord because they had no choice. Their fleets were disabled, their monopoly on technology broken, their moral authority shattered. They could either be part of the new order or be left behind by a dot as Hyan left the final session. He walked through those massive crystal doors one last time. 20 years ago, he had walked through them carrying humanity's hopes and left carrying their rejection. Today, he walked through them having helped reshape the galaxy. Outside, Captain June was waiting. The Nightfall had been repaired and was ready to return to Earth. "Ambassador," he said with a slight smile, "you did it. You changed everything." Hyan shook his head. "We did it. All of us." Every human who refused to accept that rejection was final. Every scientist who pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Every soldier who stood ready to fight for our future. Every diplomat who believed we could be better than what they said we were. They walked together toward the docking bay where a shuttle waited. Behind them, the former council chamber buzzed with activity as species who had never talked to each other as equals began the hard work of building something new. "Do you think it will work?" June asked. "The new assembly, the shared knowledge, all of it?" "I don't know," Hyan admitted. "But we gave them the chance to find out. That's all anyone can ask for." On Earth, celebrations erupted in every city. The quarantine was over. The threat was past. Humanity had not just survived, but had fundamentally changed the galaxy's power structure in Seoul. General Day stood on a balcony watching fireworks light up the night sky. Dr. Nari joined him. Both of them tired but satisfied. 20 years, Nari said softly. 20 years since they voted against us. Their final mistake, Day agreed. They thought isolation would contain us. Instead, it gave us exactly what we needed. Time to become something they couldn't ignore and pressure to become something they couldn't defeat. "What do you think happens now?" Nari asked. They smiled. "Now? Now we find out what humanity can do when we're not fighting for survival. When we're building instead of defending. When we're part of something larger instead of locked away." He looked up at the stars, visible even through the city lights. "Now we find out what we can really become." And across the galaxy, on worlds that had been waiting for change, on ships that had fought for freedom, in the hearts of billions who had just learned they weren't alone in wanting something better. The same thought echoed. The future had just begun.